Good morning, everybody, and a happy Friday morning to you. I hope everybody's week went well. As usual, a ridiculously long video packed with information, lots of stuff going on. Let's just jump in and get busy, shall we? Let's go. We are going to start off today with Buckingham Palace, which is now selling coloring books. How cool is that? It shows different palaces, it shows royal banquets. Now, don't think that this is just for children. No, coloring books nowadays are for adults as well. And this looks like something that I'd like to do. You sit there and color it all in. I love it. All right, let's move on. Next up, we have Lady Gabriella Kingston, daughter of Prince and Princess Michael of Kent. She attended the 25th Annual Brazil Foundation Gala at the Plaza Hotel in New York City on September 18th. Doesn't she look lovely? I'm happy to see her out and about since the death of her husband. All right, moving on, we know this fabulous portrait, we've seen it before, of Catherine and William. Apparently, it's been moved to a new home to make it more accessible to the public. It's a portrait painted by Jamie Corrith. It was the first official portrait of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge at the time, now the Prince and Princess of Wales. It was commissioned in 2021. It was first displayed in the Fitzwilliam Museum and other community spaces. It will now be displayed in a cathedral. Peterborough Cathedral, to be exact. What an honor is that? So now you can go there and see this fabulous painting whenever you want. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to Princess Anne. She made a visit to Ukraine at the request of the Foreign, Commonwealth, and Development Office. So she wasn't just going to be going, she was invited there. You guys know exactly what I mean. She traveled there to show solidarity with the children and families living through conflict and draw attention to the traumatic experience of children living on the front line. She met with President Zelensky and his wife, the First Lady Olena Zelensky, in Kiev. Looks like Anne handed a message to Zelensky, probably from the king. This visit was kept on the down low due to security concerns, and this makes Princess Anne the second member of the family to head to the country in a month. She's not the only one, though, to go. We know that Sophie also was in Ukraine not that long ago. Now, while she was there, she went to a special dedicated thing that they have set up for all the children who have passed away due to the war. Now, at this memorial, at the end of this, I'm not sure what kind of building, it almost looks like a cathedral. There's a lot of teddy bears that people have laid there in honor of all the children who've been killed in conflict. And Princess Anne had a teddy bear that she was holding, and she went and placed this very traditional looking teddy, which had a yellow and black ribbon tied in a bow around its neck, at the base of the memorial. And when she did, she told the First Lady, "That was one that my daughter had." That's very nice. Mrs. Zelensky also left a bear in tribute and looked quite emotional, and they nodded at each other solemnly, and then they turned and left. So she actually, Anne actually left one of Zara's teddy bears there at this memorial. This site actually commemorates more than 650 children who have died since the beginning of the conflict with Russia in 2022. Wow. All right, when she was done there, then they headed off to the next stop. And that was St. Sophia's Cathedral. What a beautiful cathedral. All that gold. Look at that. It's very ornate. But you guys know I love churches anyway. Absolutely gorgeous. And Anne looked like she was really enjoying the tour. Now, when she was done with that, she then went to a World War II museum in Kiev, where she spoke with Ukrainian service members and veterans. Now, I'm trying to keep these in the right order, but they may not be, so bear with me. Now, another stop that Anne made was to visit the Children's Rights Protection Center, which was set up during the conflict to support young people affected by the war. And Anne spoke to children who had been reunited with their families and staff that are working to bring more of the young people back to the country. Kiev estimates that 19,500 Ukrainian children have been deported or forcibly displaced from their homes to Russia and Russia-occupied territories since February of 2022. Only 1,605 have come home so far, according to the government's Children of War database. Now, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant, if you can believe this, for Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Children's Rights Commissioner for the alleged unlawful deportation of the children. Russia, of course, denies the accusation and says it has protected children by moving them from a war zone for their own safety. For those who don't know, the UK announced new sanctions targeting those supporting the alleged attempts to forcibly deport and indoctrinate Ukrainian children. That just happened a few weeks ago. And she also met and did with female police and armed forces officers working to protect women and children. This looks like it's going well. Then, of course, she had another stop to make. Anne's next stop was to meet veterans returning from the front line at a rehabilitation center also in Kiev. The Princess Royal took a tour of the facility. She joined them during their physical rehabilitation exercises. There was animal therapy sessions. They relaxed in salt therapy rooms. All kinds of really cool stuff that they have there. Now, since the full-scale Russian invasion 3 years ago, we know, again, the Duchess of Edinburgh was the first working royal to visit Ukraine in April last year. So why was Anne invited now by all these different departments? Personally, I have a feeling it might be because Ukraine realizes, or Zelensky realizes, that Harry was stepping on a lot of toes going there and the way he went and the things he said while he was there. And I feel like the Ukraine wants to show their support for the royal family. I know that seems a little far-fetched, but that's what I really believe is going on here, sincerely. And Anne is the right person to go. She looks great. Let's move on. We saw Prince William, Mr. Hunky Dunky, out today. He was out to launch the first global memorial to humanitarian aid workers at Gunnersby Park in West London. So, of course, as soon as he arrived and he shook hands, he gave a speech. And in this speech, he talked about, the people that are humanitarian aid workers, like those in Gaza. And there runs a thread of shared humanity through even the grimmest of environments, that they don't run away from danger, discomfort, and hunger. And these brave men and women stay behind and bring whatever respite, compassion, and care they can to those who need it the most. Now, when William was done with his speech, he went to view the memorial that was done to honor aid workers killed in service and those who continue to risk their lives. It was created by the artist Michael Landry. It features 15 life-sized human figures linking arms. They're separated into groups of 5. Now, gaps between the groups allow visitors to stand within the sculpture to complete the circle. Each figure is inspired by the story of a specific aid worker. Last year, the number of aid workers killed on duty was 385, while this year it has already reached 300. The idea for the memorial was driven by Dr. Elaine Laycock, a GP who worked as a humanitarian during the Bosnia conflict in the 1990s. He is 92 years old. And they met the prince and described William's involvement in the project as huge and very welcoming. All right, let's move on to Harry. And what they're saying is that even though he'd like to spend more time in the UK and he wants the focus to be on his dad, these articles are saying, well, that's really big of him. However, if he thinks he can just step back into his old life, he can take a running jump. Because it's not just his family Harry betrayed, but the rest of the country. They accuse the entire country of being a set of racist, narrow-minded little Englanders, unable to understand how lucky we were to have some sort of near divinity in our midst in the way of Harry. And the reality is, they were a couple of chancers, Meghan totally ignorant of the difference between royalty and celebrity, and both of them sold Harry's heritage down the river in order to make a quick buck. All the goodwill thrown at them, as much goodwill as there are stars in the sky, and the reward was a double temper tantrum with the two of them storming out, trashing Harry's late revered grandmother and telling everybody in Britain that they're ice cold and they wouldn't hug Meghan or ask her about her mental health. So things aren't going well for you in Montecito and you just want to come back. And what they're saying is that Harry is too toxic, too dangerous, and he should not be in close proximity to the royal family. You know, word is that Harry's people said that Harry thoroughly enjoyed his recent visit to the UK. He enjoyed the tea with his father. He felt warmly received. And he said, I look very much forward to visiting in the future on any terms whenever it's deemed appropriate. But that's not really what's going on. What's going on is Harry is like, I'm doing my bit to reconcile and they're not doing theirs, and my conscience is clear, so it's on them anyway. But really what he's saying is the men in gray suits are sabotaging my reunion with my father. This is absolutely the wrong thing to say at this time. So let's start with the most obvious, okay? Harry wants to blame everyone but himself for him leaving the royal family. 5 years after he took that freedom flight, we all remember that, he's fleeing the country, whispering to the camera like an excited defector, right? He still hasn't gotten the message that this was completely his own choice. He has gotten the message that he can't keep trashing his family, half of whom, by the way, are still in recovery from cancer, and all are more popular than him, including William in America. But for Harry, that just creates a vacancy. So who can he blame now for the fact that there isn't an instantaneous thawing of relations? It can't be the result of his own actions, that William and Catherine are wary of trusting him again. Harry doesn't get that there's more on people's minds than being upstaged by Meghan. He can't see why, when he considers his trip a few weeks ago to be such a success, why the royal family are not in full rapprochement mode and calling like emergency summons to discuss how soon they can get Harry the Charmer back, since he's their most valuable asset. How can we get him back on team? So of course it makes perfect sense that he decides to go full circle and point the finger at the staff, the royal household aides that even his mother first said are the men in gray suits, which by the way takes us to our second point. Harry using that phrase the way his mother did is incendiary and delusional. Harry totally thinks that what he's done by leaving the royal family and getting a deal with Netflix somehow put him on the path to being like his mother in her finest hours. And that wasn't because he chose to abandon his birthright. Although back in 2020, the Sussexes told us there are other ways to serve. But all we've gotten is a lot of kiss and tell documentaries about polo. It's a fatal entitlement, plus an astonishing absence of perspective. Those men in gray suits that Harry doesn't stop to think are ultimately doing his father's bidding. But Harry would rather blame a shadowy character for coming between him and his father rather than take responsibility. The only person who's come between Harry and his father is Harry, and I'm sure the royal household are entirely team damage limitation and he's the damage. They're probably as enthusiastic about a Harry rehab plan in the future as they are about the prospect of negotiating the backdoor comings and goings of the Yorks at Christmas. I bet they call him the spare us or something a lot ruder. But what the men in suits think of Harry is neither here nor there. If Charles wanted Harry close now, Harry would be close now. Okay? And there's something else too about the latest Men in Gray Suits bombshell, and it's the fact that it's not a bombshell. It's just the next round in this dull and childish monathon. He has tested everybody's patience and we're bored of him. Now, if Harry is going as a private citizen, why did he invite the royal family to Invictus? I have to tell you something. I've told you before that Invictus is paying for their security and their travel and their hotel. Well, this right here proves everything I said. A spokesman for Invictus confirmed that private security for Harry and Meghan is paid for by individual donations directed to the security effort. So what they're saying is people donated money to Invictus and said, I want this to go for Harry and Meghan's security. Bull crap. Let me just tell you guys, moving on, that Meghan should be worried. She should be really worried because with everything going on with Sarah and Andrew, if they decide finally to remove them from the royal website, Harry and Meghan will be right behind them. If they decide to remove their titles, I can assure you, Harry and Meghan will be right behind them. And now they're saying that Sarah was never prepared to take responsibility for her actions. Well, neither's Meghan. Moving on. All right, let's move on to this story. I told you about the earthquake in the Philippines. And apparently Samantha Markle put out a statement saying that her father was stuck on the 19th floor of the building. He can't walk. He was trapped. And shame on my disgusting, evil sister for putting our father in this position. I hope she's cursed. Karmic vengeance will be mine, she added. He gave her everything, and this is how she repays him. What she was talking about was that there was no power to the building. Therefore, the elevator didn't work. They were on the 19th floor, and Thomas Markle Jr. couldn't carry him down 19 flights of stairs. You really, you can't blame him there. She then wrote that provisions were being made so her father would not be trapped in a similar situation again. God bless and everyone stays safe. Well, then she put up another tweet because people claimed she was lying. And she said, it's been so funny watching stinky little trolls mouth off about an earthquake in the Philippines and say things like, you're lying. Everyone knows your brother was there to help. Talking about Thomas Markle Jr. Now, she later put out, again, another tweet thanking everybody for their care and concern and letting everybody know that they were making plans to remove Thomas Markle from this building. Now, you should know as an FYI, the death toll is now at 69, and efforts are underway to try to find survivors who might be buried under the rubble. And Godspeed to those rescuers because they're having aftershocks, and a lot of the buildings are just not safe. However, Thomas Markle has spoken out and said he is safe and he is not trapped and unable to walk. He said, and I'm quoting, I'm currently sitting on the couch in my hotel room with my feet kicked up watching Charlie Chan movies. I'm quite comfortable. He also added that he had not spoken to Samantha Markle, so he wasn't sure why she thought that he was trapped. Now, she fired back saying, I talked to my dad several times a day, and I was on the phone with him, my brother, and our friend. I texted him right before and was on the phone. They were trying to figure out what to do. Samantha then put up text messages from her father and somebody else where they clearly say they're trapped on the 19th floor. So I don't know what's going on. The whole thing is just a big mess. Oh my goodness, you guys know what I want. Put those comments down, make them good. Don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button and the bell for all notifications. Then go down into the description box where you'll find the link to my Twitter, my Gettr, my Rumble, my email, a link to my second channel, a link to my father's book, which is still up for sale on Amazon, and a link to my Amazon wish list, as well as a physical address. For those of you who have donated to my coffee fund, thank you so much. And as always, you guys, have a great day.